keep bonking my head against the mic.
Yeah, you're gonna get really close.
I'm gonna get really up close and in here.
And just whisper sexily into the microphone.
Whisper gently about forming dice pools.
Yes. Tell me about forming a dice pool.
Your target number is 7. Roll a tribute plus ability. You're looking for 7, 8, 9, and 10 on the die.
And if you get a 10,
I can't fucking keep a straight face through this.
and if you roll a 10, your success explodes. It counts as 2 successes.
You sound like you're aroused by the concept of 10s exploding.
That's what I was going for.
Okay, I was like, I was just trying to play ASMR, walking through the rules straight, and then you were like, no, this is slightly pornographic.
I mean, isn't all ASMR
slightly pornographic? Like, it is in the way that, like, weird fetishes are.
Yes.
Like, safe for work fetishes, like people who are, like, really into people, like, stepping on food, right? Like that is 100% a thing people are turned on by, and it is entirely safe for work. And then you get these, like, fetish adjacent TikToks of these, like, white women making nachos on the counter with their butts, you know what I mean? Like, which is, like, technically fetish content, but it's not, because it's technically safe for work. And I feel like ASMR falls into that category because there are definitely people who just, like, find it relaxing and, you know, stress relieving, and it puts them to sleep or whatever. And then there are other people who are like, your 10s count as 2 successes. And then they just get a boner immediately. Like, welcome to Bonus Experience. We are a podcast with a deeper look at the play experience and the finer details of running and writing games, and we are queer people speaking with authority about games. And yes, we swear, and you can die mad about it. Yeah, that's right. Everyone here knows me. I'm Monica. I'm your Polestar host, apparently dipping into doing ASMR today. I am a freelance writer and designer, primarily for the Onyx Path, but also for other places too. I'm really hoping I can be, like, novelist at some point soon. That'd be cool.
I mean, really cool. Are?
I mean, I am, but I would like it to be, like, for realsies.
You mean published?
Yeah, I do mean published. The realsiest.
The realsiest.
Yeah, I'm very much pro that, like, you know, if you did the thing, you did it. You are a novelist. If you completed the task, you are a novelist. But also, like, I want to get paid for that by a publishing house. I want that to be the realsiest.
Yes.
That was my attempt to introduce myself.
Yeah, it was a good introduction.
Thanks. No, it wasn't.
I feel introduced.
All right, cool. Who are you?
I'm Danielle Lozman, and I am a freelance writer and game designer, primarily with the Onyx Path, but also with other companies, often Magpie Publishing. Done a little bit of stuff for Green Ronin, actually. And yeah, I am too a novelist.
Oh yeah, you are.
I have written a Choice of Games novel that I got paid for.
Yeah, you did. Well, you should send me the links to where people can buy them, or say the names of them, and then I'll put them in the show notes, and people can go purchase them.
It's called Seventh Sea: A Pirate's Pact, and you can buy it for $6 on Steam, the App Store, Google Play, Amazon, or the Choice of Games website.
But we are not really here to talk about books, ASMR, or 7C. We're here to talk about rules exceptions.
Yes.
This is the episode we promised you, like, immediately. This is the follow-up from, like, episode 1 of this season, where we wanted to talk about, like, games that use rules exceptions to create powers, and then I want to talk at length about like building systems specifically so that you can use rules exceptions to make your cool powers do some stuff.
Yeah, so essentially you make a system and then you make your powers break that system constantly.
Right. Which, when we say break, we mean...
in a good way.
In a good way.
Everything's consensual here.
Right, yeah. The kink of game design is that it's going to break in a way that we both agreed to. We're this
I don't know.
We're in today, apparently.
You started it. You were all like, I'm going to whisper
did.
really close in the microphone for no reason.
Correct, I did. I did start this. I will accept responsibility. So, when you want to work with rules exceptions, and like, one of my favorite examples of rules exceptions in design is probably Malifaux, because it has a pretty clean base system. And I'm talking about the war game, not Through the Breach. It has a very clean base system, and then because every model has to kind of be like a little character, the rules exceptions then create that flavor. So you really, when you want to do things like that, we're gonna, boy, are we gonna talk about essence in this episode? Oh boy, are we? Buckle up. Or if you're tired of hearing it, I would just turn the episode off like now. Yeah. Because that's, we're going to talk about it a lot. So like, when you want to create things that are really cool and flavorful and whatever, you have to sort of start with a solid base.
Yes.
That then gives you room to go. So the main rule says I can't attack twice, but this power says I can. Right? So your basic rules should always be something fun and interesting and worth engaging with that you want to see more of. Or, make an exception to.
Right.
When you apply superpowers to them. And I think, big bold statement, like, superhero games really should work on this design.
Yes, because they're literally exceptions to the normal rules of the world.
Right. Where, like, if I were to design a rules exceptions-based superhero game, you would want to have, and like, the first thing you have to do is sort of decide where the baseline is, right? When you're building a game built around rules exceptions. So, like, you kind of have to think about, if I played this game with no powers and no exceptions, what would it look like? And in Exalted's case, in Essence's case, we, like, the sort of very baseline would be, like, a heroic mortal, like a really powerful regular guy, right? And you can do that with the main system pretty slickly. Like, people were all like, why aren't there heroic mortal rules? And I was like, it's literally just playing the game with no charms. That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. It's literally just playing the game with no charms. Like, you can still do gambits, you can still build power, you can still do war, you can still pilot a ship. Like, all those things are the base rules. They're things everybody can do. The game assumes that the base level of competence is a pretty badass guy.
Yeah.
Even if he's a regular guy. And then it's like, but you play super heroic people in the setting where we kind of assumed that even regular people can be pretty badass. So here's a whole bunch of things that your superpowered guy can do that your regular guy can't do. So if I were making a super system for playing more comic booky superheroes and not the sort of Exalted blend, if you were making a supers game, you would probably want to look at, like, what is our baseline, right? What does our regular dude look like? And I'm not super well versed in comic books. Are you?
No, actually.
Okay, cool. Me neither. Great, cool. I picked a bad example, but like, because I was like, D, who's a good example of like sort of a low-level hero? And I'm like, I don't fucking know. I don't follow comics. That's not really my thing.
So I am a fan of superhero stories and can say that, like, you have a difference between, like, let's just use someone really popular who doesn't have actual supernatural powers, which would be like Batman.
Yeah.
Right? He's just a dude with special training and some badass gadgets.
He's got some he's got some cool stuff. He's got his superpower is money.
Yeah. Which maybe is a little supernatural if we think about it too hard. But yeah, it is, everything that he can do or does do is either because he's been trained really well to do it, or he has enough money to buy a gadget to do something like be shark repellent.
Right. I was also thinking of Green Arrow or Hawkeye.
Yes.
Who's literally just like a dude with really good eyesight and a bow.
Yes.
And like some tricks that those things can do.
Yes.
So like, even then, Batman, Green Arrow, Hawkeye all have some rules exceptions, probably, but, like, our theoretical system here should be able to model them being pretty badass regular guys before any of those things come into play.
Right.
Like, Bruce Wayne, my brain almost said fucking Bruce Willis.
Also a regular old superhero.
Yeah, also a regular guy. Fairly badass regular guy, yeah. No, Bruce Wayne, prior to the rules exceptions that would make his bat stuff and his money, should certainly be able to, like, roll to climb on something, or, you know, make social rolls at a party in his regular guy form, or, you know...
In fact, that's what his regular guy form does all the time.
It sure does. He sure does, yeah. Like, if we're looking at a super system with, like, a decent social thing, specifically for playing, like, Bruce Wayne as a guy, for role-playing in your, you know, non-superheroic mode, then, like, you may want a system that reflects that just fine. And then, like, you have cool things like where, you know, Bruce Wayne excels in that arena, right? But then when you try to get to things like, okay, we're also going to talk about, like, Superman.
Right. Laser beam eyeballs.
Right, normally, people cannot shoot lasers from their eyeballs. But we have a power that says you sure can.
Yep.
And then, like, ideally, a well-built rules exception system says, okay, laser beam eyeballs are just a weapon that comes out of your eyes. The laser beam eye part is narrative. Right? Like, the framing of that doesn't have to be mechanical. It can be whatever you want it to be. It could be a mouth beam. It could be a finger beam. You probably the way you're writing up Superman's eye beams is the same way you're going to write up Darkseid's eye beams, the ones that zigzag.
Yep.
You know, right? Like that's the same thing. It just looks different.
Yep.
And then, like, we're going to stat this up the same as a weapon. It's going to do laser type damage. It may pierce armor. It might melt metal, right? Like, building a rules exception system, I think, is basically just like building a very detailed toolkit.
Yeah.
It's like putting the bucket of Legos in front of someone, and you're like, okay, all the pieces to make anything you want are in here.
Yeah.
They're right here. Normally, you can't lock these two things together, but we say you can.
Yeah, I think when you think about it that way, and some of that is, it's not an exception to the rule in the sense that laser beam eyeballs are not breaking any normal rules. They're not saying, this doesn't work that way anymore. They're an addition to the rule. They're using the rules in a way that they were intended, because otherwise they wouldn't be part of the rules. But they're outside the norm. Right.
Yeah. I think we'll go back to Essence, because I have that to reference in front of me.
Sure.
So one of the rules in Essence is when you flurry, which is an action that lets you do more than one thing at a time, they have to be two different things.
Yes.
So you can intimidate someone and throw a rock at them, and then the build power action, one of the things that lets you, like, do a miscellaneous action to build up the resource power that lets you do all kinds of special attacks and whatever, normally cannot be included in a flurry, one of these multiple actions. So charms specifically allow you to break rules, and there's absolutely one of them that says you can make 2 attacks.
Yep.
And there's absolutely another one of them that says you can flurry this build power.
Yep.
And then one of the other things that you have to consider when you are doing these things is that there are still limits, even when you are making rules exceptions.
Yes.
Like, Essence has a hard and fast rule that says you can't ever take more than 2 actions. I don't care if this charm says you can attack twice. You still can't attack a third time after that, even if you have something else that allows you to do so.
Right.
And then in a future supplement, it's not out yet, but I'm going to tease it a little bit. We break that rule again. There's some high essence stuff in Pillars of Creation that's like, no, you can have a third action on top of your normal 2, and then it goes, but it has to be one of these things from this list.
Right.
So we really paid attention to being like, okay, once you get past Essence 3, things start to get weird. We're going to make exceptions to the exceptions, but we're still going to kind of keep the limiters on.
Right.
And I'm just going to come out and say it. That's really hard.
It is. Yeah, when I think about I know that Exalted is not a level-based game, but it kind of is a level-based game in that Essence's levels are, you know, an Essence 5 character is more powerful than an Essence 1 character, even if they have the same number of charms.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the number of charms, it is the ability that the charms are conveying.
Right.
So in a level-based system, being able to balance the options at the higher level against the options at the lower level. Because the other thing you don't want to do with those higher level powers is make people want them to the point where they invalidate the use of the lower level powers. Mm-hmm. And so if a lower level power is letting you break a rule, and then a higher level power lets you break that same rule only better, that's not as good as like this one lets me break a rule, and then this one lets me take that rule break and add to it.
Yeah. So one of the questions that I've seen asked on forums and stuff where I don't participate but do get sent to me a lot is why didn't Essence do Supernal? Why First Among Equals? Why the choices that we made? Which I will probably put in the design diary I intend to write at some point, but I'm going to talk about it right now. So Supernal, for those unfamiliar, in Core 3rd Edition, allows Solars to take charms in their Supernal ability from any Essence level at any time.
Yeah.
So Essence 1 characters can take Essence 5 charms all the way up to the Essence 5 charm at character creation if they have the resources, right?
Right.
And it's supposed to be that reflective of Solars being the pinnacle of human ability and all that. And I think it succeeds in feeling that way. However, there's some very, very, very good reasons why we didn't do that in Essence. I know that was a complaint that people have had, so let me stop and explain why, because it's related to this topic. So, if we had chosen to allow Supernal for Solars, and allow this one Exalt type to jump the line, skip the curve, go straight to Essence 5, then that means that every single universal charm set has to have an Essence 2, 3, 4, 5 option, every single one. And then that means every single ability in each Solar charm set for this book and every book to come needs to have Essence 2, 3, 4, 5 options for every single ability. Otherwise, if you're like, I'm Navigate Supernal, and we don't have Essence 2, 3, 4, 5 options in there, you are losing out.
Yep.
And we had such a tiny amount of space to work with. Like, I don't really think the audience understands how much we had to fit 50 pounds of Exalted in a 5-pound bag. Like, and how fucking hard that was. And
well, you gotta boil it for 5 hours first.
Yeah, you have to boil it for at least 18 months.
Yeah, and then strain it.
Right.
And filter it. And honestly, when you do that, stuff like that needs to come out.
Yeah.
And, one of the things, because we talk about like space.
Right.
And it's not just, oh, well, we didn't have the word count.
Right.
It is also a level of design complexity that when you start thinking about it, if the Solars have a 2, 3, 4, 5 option for every single ability, for every single charm set, for all the universals, then the other Solar likes need to have something similar going on, even though they don't have Supernal.
Right.
And you would want that in Essence. If you're doing it for Solars, you need to do it for the other groups. And now you've got this design philosophy going on for these groups, and then maybe all the Celestials should just have options at every level for every skill, for every whatever. And then now the Terrestrials look a little slim in comparison. And you run into the problem of Exalted, which is it is hard to balance 10 Exalt types against each other.
Yeah, it is. So what we did instead of trying to make that extremely complicated, difficult to balance, difficult to design thing work was go, okay, universal charms and the base system define what Exalt means, right? And Exalt alike things. So, like, other things that are theoretically Exalt level powerful, but are maybe not the Exalted, can be modeled using the base system and universal charms just fine. And then you have Exalt charms that make each Exalt type unique. And then rather than, because we just, and like you're pointing out, once we have to do it for Solars, we have to do it for Abysses, we have to do it for Infernals, and that's 30% of what we're writing. And while that probably would have been cool to see the 2, 3, 4, 5 options in the core, I also know that most games, period, never make it past starting level.
Yes.
So one of our focuses was on making sure that the core book presented an extremely robust starting level experience.
Yes.
Because that is so much more important than anything else, like design-wise. And back to the actual topic, that meant making sure that the core rules were extremely solid, that the exceptions were in great places, and that players felt excited and rewarded to understand the basics of the system and then figure out all the things that they can do that bend the rules.
Yeah. You know, diverging from Exalted essence for a moment.
How dare you?
I know, I'm sorry. I will say that for exception-based design in general, like, I feel like we need to do a little bit of a walk back.
Okay.
You know, we explained what it is. You take a rule set, and you break it. But I think one of the things we need to consider when we talk about exceptions-based design is that what rules we break and how we break them are not just whimsically decided by throwing a dart at the wall.
Oh God, no. Yeah.
You know, if you create a hard and fast rule, let's call it source pool.
Sure, I like that.
So you've got a source pool of which you use to spend, and that's how you get your powers. That's cool. You know, whatever your source pool is, however it's determined, is how it's determined, that the rules for determining that are there. And then how you spend it, you know, spend 1, get this effect, spend 2, get this effect. If you're making an exception-based system, you would not change how you calculate how much source pool you have to begin with. That wouldn't be a special, like, rule breaker. That's a rule.
Right.
Is a rule you could break, but it would be nonsensical to do that.
I could see an exception that would not break the way you do that or change the way you do that, but instead maybe give you a new pool of source to spend on specific things.
Right. You could introduce a new pool.
Right.
You could introduce new ways to regain the pool.
Yeah. You could make certain things free.
You could make certain things cheaper or free. You could change how you spend the pool, but you should not change how to calculate what that pool is.
Correct.
And the reason for that is because if you've got a special mechanic that's changing a core fundamental feature about your character's sheet, and not just like add a dot here or there, but like, how do you do, like, I have 10 pool. Okay, well, this says that you have 15 pool when you use it. Like, what? And also, I gotta have to remember that past when I use it.
Yeah, that also brings up the point that, like, your exceptions should be not so exceptional that they are impossible to remember or use.
Yes.
You kind of want to keep it simple, stupid.
Yes.
Which means making your base rule something that is easy to hook things onto. When you are making a core system and you want to do rules exceptions, you really want to write that core system to have interesting spaces to get bigger.
Right. When I think about, like, you know, the KISS system, keep it simple, stupid.
Yes.
It applies to so much, and it makes, like, I'm not going to lie, Exalted is a complicated system.
It is. Yeah, and even Essence trimmed down is still a complicated system. It just works pretty well.
Yeah, it works pretty well. There's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of things to remember. There's a lot going on in the system. There's a lot of subsystems. I can imagine that, you know, if I were running a game, I would want a book nearby to reference. I know that ventures are on page 151 if I need to go look at them. I will never not know that information. But I do also feel like it's not as complicated as it could be, and that's on purpose. And you may come up with a game system where you're like, oh, we're not going to roll dice, or we are going to roll dice, but we're going to do like some logarithmic algorithm to determine like a range of numbers or something like that. We're going to solve for X.
Oh, God.
Yeah. Like, the moment you start introducing like serious complex concepts like that into your game, your rules exceptions become even more complex.
Yeah, and then it rapidly becomes inaccessible, and you should go back and listen to the episode before this one with Hiromi, where we talk at length about not doing this.
Yes. So when you have, like, roll some dice, add some numbers together, roll some dice, look for a number, that target number is how many successes you have, this is how many successes you need, do the thing. That's the core system for Exalted.
Yep, that is the very bare bones of it. Yep.
The most bare bones version of it is add some numbers together, roll some dice, look for a number, count successes, compare that to a small number. Did you succeed or not?
Right.
It is pretty simple. It's easy to do. Mm-hmm. Everything around it hinges on those truths. Mm-hmm. There's a bunch of core rules that hinge on those truths. Mm-hmm. And there's a bunch of rules exceptions that say, oh, you can only add, like your core rule is you can only add X many dice to a roll. Rules exception says, might add some more.
Yeah. Sometimes the rules are like, so the basic rule is like, you get dice from situational modifiers. They don't come from anywhere else, right? Like bonuses and penalties are the base thing, and they usually only go up to +3. Yeah. And then the excellency rolls up and is like, this goes up to 5.
Yep, up to 5, baby. Literally the first exception you'll ever meet.
Yep. By the way, you can add up to 5 dice to this thing. Now there's a core rule that says you can only add up to 10 dice at any time. So those count towards it. And then later on, we're like, here's 3 more dice. They don't count. And because we really wanted to keep the number of the number of dice in your coffee can that you're rolling to a minimum, but still feel big, the ones that go, here's even more dice, they don't count though, are pretty minimal.
Pretty minimal, and as far as I'm aware, and I could be wrong about this, they often are in places where they can't stack with each other.
Yeah. Or if they do, it's a real big corner case.
Yeah. Like, if they happen on the same step, so you can't use both of them, or they're not to the same kind of action.
Or one is really narrow and the other is really broad, because you can totally activate the systematic understanding of everything to sagacity and suddenly know everything about marine biology, and that gives you +3 bonus dice. And then use your excellency for a maximum of +8.
Right.
you sure can do that. But yeah, there's a bunch of other points of control. So if you are looking at things where you're like, no, there's even an exception to the exception, you still want to be thinking about how you control that.
Right.
Because otherwise you'll break it in the way that we didn't consent to.
Right. Yeah, so thinking about exceptions-based systems, and this is something that I see, speaking of broken, I often will see people talking about like, oh, this power's broken, or oh, this power, so powerful, it's broken, it breaks the system. That can happen, but I think it happens less often than people think it does. So I think people see an exception that looks really good and imagines it happening all the time. And just being like, oh my goodness, when this happens, then this giant thing happens and it's just nuts. And that's so broken and breaks the system. And it's like, I mean, yeah, it is a big thing and it does look kind of wild, but it's such a corner case, or the likelihood of it going off or situationally happening is really small. Yeah. Like, this is going to happen. If it happens every single game, I would be shocked.
Or, like, it has narrative restraints that require a certain situation to happen beforehand, or for the player to set up those situations beforehand. Or it has a limit, like, you can only do this once a story. Or it is extremely expensive, so that it's impossible to spam, because you simply don't have the resources to do this super powerful thing 20 times. There's lots of restrictions like that.
Yeah, it makes me think about, in PBTA games, or at least Magpie PBTA games, they have, like, a moment of truth, or it's called Moment of Truth in Masks. I'm not sure what it's called in other games, but it's essentially this moment of you get to take directorial control over the scene and narrate what happens. It is whoa powerful.
Yeah.
But you first have to unlock it by spending experience. Like, you have to build up to it. And then once you've unlocked it, it usually means that, like, in some games, it's like, now that you've done your moment of truth, you can't do it again.
Right.
So you have to choose when you're going to do it.
Yep.
Or you do it and then you just make a new character because that was it. Like, that was your thing.
Yeah. That makes me think of Heart, You read Heart at all?
I have not, but I've heard of it.
Okay, so each class in Heart basically has an ultimate move where, like, you get to do this absolutely bugfuck thing, and then your character dies.
It's amazing.
Yeah, and, like, that's sort of the point. Like, Heart is all about, like, these doomed adventurers plunging into this cool and terrifying place, and then, like, everybody is kind of doomed, and that's like a thing you know going in, right?
That's exciting.
And then every class has a thing that lets them go out in a blaze of glory on their own terms.
I want to play this game. That sounds amazing.
It does look really, really, really cool. By the same people who did Spire.
Oh,
way,
okay, yeah.
way more interested in Heart than Spire.
Yeah. Spire does sound cool also, but like the way you just described Heart sounds like...
Heart has a class where you're literally a guy who's a train. Like a knight who's a train. You have a giant, like, train suit of armor on and, like, can smash through things. And I forget what their ultimate go crazy, then die.
Motherfucker.
Yeah. It is a very, like, I don't remember what it does, but I remember reading it and just being like, yeah, choo-choo, motherfucker.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Cool. Anything else you want to say on the topic?
I think, if you're designing for exceptions, then start with that. Know that that's what you're planning to do.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that has to be that kind of has to be your goal from the get.
And it's okay to, like, throw in a couple of exceptions after the fact, but if it's not, like, a full exception-based rule system, like, D&D is not an exception-based rule system.
Yeah, not really, no.
Not really, but...
Not really.
But there's, every now and then...
Neither is Fate.
Neither is Fate.
Not to drag D&D.
No,
neither is Fate.
No, neither is Fate. It's not dragging, right? Like, that it's just not designed that way, which is totally fine. To give some examples so that people aren't like, every game I can think of is exception-based. Like, no, actually, they're not. But even in those games, there may be a thing or a power or special ability that does create an exception. But it's pretty rare.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know that I would really call PBTA games exceptions-based either.
No.
Yeah, not really. But, like, story path games are.
Yes.
Exalted is. Malifaux and Through the Breach are.
I'm
trying to look at my shelf. I don't really know Pugmire or Pathfinder well enough, but I'm gonna lean no.
No, Pugmire is a D20 system that cleaves very close to D&D 5th edition.
Yeah, okay. Fair enough. Yeah, so no, not really. But, like, yeah, they are out there. And they are also not out there.
Yeah.
Speaking of exceptions-based design, do you want to talk about At the Gates?
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
So, At the Gates is we just announced it at OPPCon. You're listening to this after that.
You are listening to this after that, so we just announced it.
We just announced it. It is a new fantasy take on StoryPath using the StoryPath Ultra system. And it is my personal love letter to JRPGs. And the magic system that it uses looks a lot kind of like Charms in Exalted in the sense that it does a lot of exception-based things. In fact, there's magic and then there's also what are called arts. And arts are like tactical abilities. And really that's where a lot of the exceptions are coming from.
Guess who wrote them?
Was it you?
It was me.
Oh.
Yeah. Very much looking forward to At the Gates. We did a little At the Gates character generation playtest. And speaking of character generation, there were some hiccups, but that was because we were working from a first draft manuscript. But, like, it's like that. However, once we get those ironed out, this was an excellent little guy generator. We made some excellent characters. I'm, like, a little frustrated with the manuscript, but anytime you work from a manuscript, it's annoying.
Oh, yeah,
all the time. But, like, when those, I was like, okay, some rough spots, but once those are hammered out, boy, this is going to be good. I'm so excited to make characters in this.
Oh, yeah, like, I'll just go ahead and say, like, we made a little slime girl.
Slime woman,
sorry.
She's an adult.
Yes.
She's a slime woman.
Who is a caster, a spellcaster. Yep. We made a little bat woman, girl.
Little bat person.
Person who was a fighter, right?
I think so.
And we made a pirate. What was your pirate? Was a fish person, right?
Fish person, yeah. It just sort of Undine Undertale if she were stupid.
Yeah.
and a warlord and a pirate.
Yes.
That was my character.
Yeah. Weston made a healer who was a little kind of rabbity person.
Yeah.
Very shy, very kind of like nervous.
Yeah.
Nervous little guy. And then I made a perfectly normal human who was very ashamed about their very normal features.
Didn't you also have pink hair?
Yes. Like naturally pink hair.
Pink hair. We were like, no. Normal person, but also anime protagonist.
Yes.
So, and I think we all, you can play very classic JRPG roles,
yes.
like healer, tank. Well, tank is fighter, but.
Yeah. Healer, fighter, thief, / rogues, / spellcaster, and I threw in a warlord because I like controllers.
Yeah, I was like, listen, if we're gonna do it's not, because the Story Path Ultra is not grid based,
right?
This is sort of also a love letter to D&D 4th edition in a lot of ways, and I was like, listen, if there's not a warlord in this,
right,
I'll never speak to you again.
Like, don't worry, it was already there.
You were like sold.
Yeah.
You don't have to threaten me. I was like, that's fair.
Right. Yeah. I'm already in this to win this, don't worry.
Yeah, and then each one of those classes, we didn't get there with this character creation because we just made characters, but like each one of those classes then has a big boy version.
Yes.
All classes have advanced versions, and there's a plan. Each one has a big boy version in the stuff that we're writing, and we have plans to do more.
Yes.
I won't reveal anything more than that.
Yeah, the goal is to have supplements that expand the base rules out, either into other additional classes, additional advanced classes, and more information on the regions and areas of the world.
If you were a big fan of, like, adventure, assassins, essence, like a ton of people who worked on all of those are on this book.
Yes,
so, like,
I picked a really strong design team.
Yeah.
I'm so looking forward to the final drafts because I'm certain that this game is going to be so good.
I am strongly inclined to agree. BXP is brought to you by the Misdirected Mark Network.
Ding!
Thank you. Become a BXP patron. Patrons get an extended cut of every episode, episodes early, and a special place to hang out on our Discord, and you can support us for as little as $1 crisp American dollar per month. If you would rather support Bonus Experience without Patreon, you can subscribe on Ko-fi instead, ko-fi.com/bonusexp, or buy our stuff. You can go to bxpcast.com/bxpswag and check out our merch page. But don't forget that BXP is sponsored by Nerdy Kepi. You can get all kinds of rad queer swag. It's still Pride Month. Remember to use code BXPcast at checkout for 10% off. It never expires, and they have, like, button-downs, they got skirts that go spinny, they got dresses with pockets, they got leggings, they got cool shoes, they got those Exalted bags.
Yeah.
You should go get yourself one of those Exalted bags. They're very cool. I've been using that as my game bag. They also have, like, tapestries, so you can proudly display your bisexual heraldry.
Yes.
Put that on your wall. All kinds of stuff. BXPcast, 10% off, and you can use it over and over again. So if you're like, I bought some really cool shoes, but that's it for this paycheck, but I really wanted that flag, you can always go back.
Yes.
You can always go back. And you don't have to wait for it to be Pride Month again to buy Pride stuff. You can
be proud all year round.
Be proud all year round. I want you to be. And if you like Bonus Experience, you will also like Theko with Advantage. Ange and Jared love talking about RPGs and D&D. Together they share insights into the games they're running in the campaign journal and then tackle a variety of topics that affect the game in the DM's workshop. They're going to talk anyway, so they might as well record it. Maybe you'll even pick up an ancient D&D factoid about a previous edition of the game that you'll never use.
That does sound like fun.
Yeah. And if you want more of Bonus Experience, you can find us at bxpcast.com, part of the Misdirected Mark Network.
Bing.
Thanks. If you want to send us an email, let us know about some of your favorite exceptions-based designs or some of your favorite powers that you've seen in an exceptions-based game, you can send an email to bonusexpcast@gmail.com. Or you can follow us at Bonus Experience on Tumblr. We got that up and running again. And if you want to hang out and talk to me directly and Dee and a bunch of other people, we have a Discord. You can join it at tinyurl.com/bxpdiscord. Open 24/7, like Discords are. Why did I say that? I don't know. If you want to hear more of me, I'm a sometimes guest of the Eternal Mooncast, talking about my other special interest, Sailor Moon, which can be found at eternalmooncast.com, as well as the Systematic Understanding of Everything, where we did a full series on explaining Exalted at exaltcast.com. Dee, where can they find you?
They can find me at daniellozon.com. It has links to my Facebook and my Twitter and other social media I don't use. And you can also find me on Discord, often in the BXP Discord lurking, and also in the Onyx Path Discord lurking. So you can find me in both those places.
Yeah, I'm in both those places too. Oh, and we're both on the Exalted Fan Corp too.
Yes.
Lurking.
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 I'm old magmatits in that Discord, and I'm never changing it.
I forgot about it. Every time I go to tag you and it's just like all magmatits. Right. Right.
I go to type something serious and then I see my own screen name and I'm like, well.
Yeah, look for us in these public spaces. I really need to make myself a website if I'm going to become a novelist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I need to get around to that. Well, project for another time. Anyway, everybody get out.
Out.
I gotta go get ready for a game and stuff.
Yep.
All right, and don't forget, change it if you want to.
Do I have to do this? Ugh, fine. Bonus Experience is written by Monica, and edited by Margaret. Our logo and art is by Nino Studios. Find her on Facebook and Instagram. Our theme song is Reuse Noise with the Light by CDK, and is used under the Attribution Non-Commercial Creative Commons license. BXP is part of the Misdirected Mark Network. Okay, there, I read it. Now bye!